Welcome to our new series, Leading SA, where I sit down with some of the leaders of San Antonio to talk about some of the issues that we face here, some of the ways to fix the problems, and the vision of the future of the Alamo City. To kick off the series, I sit down with Mayor Ron Nirenberg and we talk about a lot. We go over some of his top priorities like transportation. We also talk about things like crime, homelessness, and the protection of the aquifer and clean drinking water here for San Antonio, and how this all relates to the prevention of poverty here in the Alamo City. Right off the bat, we don't have much time to waste. What is your top priority?
There's a lot of priorities for 2020, including our transportation plan and finally ending the underfunding of transportation that's been happening historically here in San Antonio. But the number one priority, the most important charge for our community this year is to make sure that we have an accurate and complete count in the 2020 census, because everything that we do, from our central services to funding infrastructure to our representation in Congress, depends on making sure that every person in our community is counted.
Okay, going back to transportation.
Yeah.
Obviously that's a big one.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about via ConnectSA. Explain to everyone watching this what exactly ConnectSA is,
yep,
and why it's important for the growth of San Antonio.
Yeah. So in 2050, our population would have doubled. Our population will be roughly the size of the city of Chicago based on the state demographer's estimates. The city is growing. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Business as usual is a guarantee for us all to be in gridlock over the next several years, because traffic is increasing by about 75% over the next 2 decades. So what we have to do is make sure that we have a modern multimodal transportation system that gets us moving, that gets people out of congestion. And so we've been working with the community over the last 6 years to really develop that plan, an integration of all the different modes of transportation that we have, and finally bringing mass transit to San Antonio. And that is what ConnectSA is all about. And so the work that we're doing right now is to basically bring that ConnectSA plan to the public and to the council and to the commissioner's court to get approval and ultimately put the funding for that system on the ballot in November.
I want to get to the funding in a second, but can you explain the idea of the advanced rapid transit, some of these cool new age technology that can help the transportation system?
Yeah, so advanced rapid transit is simply trackless trains. It's basically a mass transit system for the first time in our city that moves people from point A to point B in a much quicker, more efficient manner. So that's the system that we've been working on that would connect the major points in San Antonio, the airport and downtown, Port San Antonio to Fort Sam, all of the different economic centers, UTSA, medical center, all these different points that we know there's a lot of activity and a lot of transportation happening and a lot of congestion. We're trying to link up with a mass transit system in the city of San Antonio. So the ART, Advanced Rapid Transit, is a system of transportation that would allow us to bring high density mass transit to San Antonio in a cost-effective, fundable manner.
Okay, you wrote and Judge Wolf wrote about how important transportation is, not only for congestion, but also for the growth of education and the people who are trying to get out of poverty. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in order for us to get out of congestion, to have a good quality of life where we're not sitting in traffic all day, in order to keep our economy viable, we need to have a modern transportation system. That's also critically important for reducing emissions, for environmental sustainability, and for ending poverty. Because one of the biggest factors in poverty and simply a family being able to make ends meet is housing costs, but also transportation costs. Having an ability to get to work, get to school, get to home in an efficient, affordable manner. And therefore, a public transportation system, one that's viable and efficient and effective, is an absolutely critical component of our fight to end poverty in San Antonio. That's why it's critically important that we improve our basics with regard to a transportation system in 2020, and that includes our bus system and ultimately mass transit in San Antonio.
Now, honestly, one of the biggest things that you guys brought up, you and Judge Wolf, were the numbers, and that was the per capita spending in comparison from San Antonio to some of the biggest cities in Texas, and how low we were in comparison. I believe we were at $98, and we had the likes of Dallas at $249 per person, and then you had Austin and Houston, both substantially higher per person. Now, why is that?
The state of Texas authorized municipalities like San Antonio to start public transportation systems in 1977 through the use of a 1 penny sales tax. San Antonio, unlike other cities that are on that list, chose to use half a cent. So we've been underfunding transportation for the last 40 years. And so what we're proposing to do is finally improve that investment and begin to build a modern transportation system that will move people effectively, that will get people out of gridlock, and will also essentially get our economy to become a viable, competitive economy for the long run.
And so that being said, we're going to go back to the actually, how do you pay for ConnectSA? How do you pay for the ART?
Yeah, so the critical element of this and what the public will be able to vote on is the sales tax initiative, because sales tax is allocated by a public vote. In 2021, the allocation, the sales tax will expire. It's currently diverted to other programs. So what we're proposing to do is bring that sales tax to a vote so that we can begin to invest in our transportation system. And the programs that are currently funded with that sales tax, which will expire in 2021, we're looking to fund through other mechanisms that don't cause tax increases or rate increases.
And so one of those programs is the Aquifer.
That's right.
And so what is the program in place that can help fund the Aquifer?
So the Aquifer Protection Program is something that I've been championing my entire career as a public servant. It's something that has bought 160,000 acres over the Aquifer recharge zone that protects the recharge of San Antonio's water source. And so that program has been successful over the last 20 years. It was started by the San Antonio water system way back in the mid-90s, in the late 90s. And so what we're proposing to do is that program expires, the sales tax expires, is to start funding it through the San Antonio water system, because the water system's #1 priority is to make sure that our drinking water is available, that it's safe, that it's affordable. And we can do that in an efficient manner in the primary mission of SAWS by using the water system. And we can do that appropriately, effectively, without raising rates.
Now we are seeing a rates raised for SAWS, I think starting this month, actually.
Yeah.
Was it 9.9%?
Yeah, so back in 2015, I believe, the City of San Antonio, the council authorized a series of rate adjustments, which happens periodically. Rates are adjusted periodically for the cost of inflation, for the sourcing of new water, to maintain infrastructure. And the City Council approved back in 2015 a series of rate increases. That's what's kicking in now. So, you know, we expect as the city grows that those adjustments will vary from time to time. But when it comes to the Aquifer Protection Program, relative to the overall expenses of San Antonio water system, this is a very small amount. So we are working to make sure that we take on aquifer protection in a long-term manner without impacting people's rates.
And I think it's important to mention that you actually wrote it shouldn't be one or the other. We can have both.
Well, I would ask you, imagine this city 20 years from now where we've chosen to continue to underinvest in our transportation system. That's a city that is gridlocked. That's a city that has choking air quality. That's a city that has an economy that's stagnated. And that's a city that has still uncontrolled poverty. We have the ability to change that. That's why we're choosing to be proactive about our transportation system, for all those reasons. Similarly, imagine a city that has protected 160,000 acres of its recharge zone. That in 20 years from now we've said, no, we're done. That's also not a city that I want to live in. I want to be in a city that does that kind of environmental stewardship over the long run too. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we have a city that is doing both. There is a path, there is a way to do it. The options are limited given the state law, but we can get this done, and that's exactly what we're working to do.
Okay, now talking about future, the population growth, one big thing that we had a lot of people reach out to us and talk about was infrastructure. Mm-hmm. You know, we have these plans, these elaborate plans for 20 years in the future, But we also have people that are saying there's sidewalk gaps. You know, their
That's right.
roads are still unpaved.
Yeah, so ConnectSA actually is an investment, short-term but significant investment in sidewalk infrastructure, in bicycle lanes, in basic street repair. So ConnectSA is the whole comprehensive system in addition to the public transportation system. But what I will say also is that when I became mayor in 2017, I talked to neighbors around this city, and they were saying the same thing. Infrastructure needs to be repaired. In fact, on my side of town, the infrastructure has lagged behind other areas. So what we did as a city council is we tripled the amount of resources that we were putting to basic infrastructure. And not only did we do that, we focused that money in the areas that were needed the most. So neighborhoods that were being left behind for so long, they're finally starting to catch up. But this is a city of 5,000 miles of streets and sidewalks. So that change doesn't happen overnight, but I will tell you, we are finally gaining ground on the battle for safer, more effective infrastructure, and we're doing that because of the work of the City Council over the last 3 years.
Now, what does the future of biking lanes look like in and around San Antonio, specifically, you know, the Broadway corridor area?
Yeah, so we know in order for us to have safe bicycle commutes happening in San Antonio, we've got to build safe bicycle infrastructure. So what we're doing is, part of ConnectSA also is to continue to accelerate our bicycle master plan, and that calls for protected bike lanes, not painted white lines on the side of a road that's going 50 miles an hour. That's not a safe bike lane. What we want to do is have bicycle traffic separated from the vehicular traffic. And we need that in areas where we know that there would be commuting happening, especially in the urban areas of San Antonio. That's why we had the debate about Broadway. And while it wasn't going down Broadway, we did send a message that we need to have safe bicycle infrastructure on those major corridors. So we did see an alternative develop. That kind of discussion is happening on an ongoing basis now on every street project. We have to take a look at if we can safely add bicycle infrastructure for the future.
We are seeing Broadway much like the Pearl. Pearl 5 years ago was not the Pearl. Southtown 5 years ago, not Southtown. Broadway, now you're seeing all of these new companies popping up, seeing the Soto come in. What is your future, what is your vision for the future of Broadway and the surrounding area?
Well, you know, we're seeing the urban areas of San Antonio become, you know, very walkable, very livable. We're seeing great restaurants and housing pop up, and we're seeing, you know, a life come to the urban core that we haven't seen in several decades. I think that's wonderful. My vision for the urban core is to continue that trajectory, but also make sure that downtown is a place for everyone. So as housing gets developed and as you know, properties get invested in, we're also making sure that the taxation doesn't get out of control where people are priced out of their homes and have to move because their rents are going too high. So we're working together with our community, with the different entities that are in that area to make sure that we've got programs and initiatives in place that make sure that taxes don't rise disproportionately from the other areas in town, and that downtown truly can be a place for everyone.
How specifically do you do that?
So we started in 2017 a Mayor's Housing Policy Task Force that brought together literally hundreds of people all around San Antonio to come up with policies and ways that we can mitigate some of the unintended consequences of revitalization. And so we have a number of things going on right now. We have a committee called Reducing Barriers that is looking at all the different, you know, areas of red tape and bureaucracy that we can perhaps reduce the waste and help lower the cost of construction in some cases, that ultimately has a positive impact on the affordability of an area. We also are looking at things like risk mitigation, so where if someone, you know, if there are communities that are getting developed and nearby them are older residences that are having a negative impact on their property values, we can help mitigate some of that. We're also looking at ways that we can correct the supply-demand imbalance, because one thing that has driven home values up is the fact that there's not a whole lot of inventory. There hasn't been a lot of production based on our population growth of simple housing of all types. And so we've been working with that, and finally, you know, for the first time in a decade, we've got hundreds, thousands of units that are in the pipeline, hundreds of affordable units that are more closely matched to the area median income.
Now, I know some of the apartment prices jumping up downtown start at egregious prices. $1,300 is usually the market value for downtown. How do you keep people who are living downtown?
Yeah, so that's exactly why we want to have mitigation of those things and reduce the cost that everyone has to bear eventually in order to live downtown. But when it comes to use of incentives and things like that have spurred development, which was the policy even 6-7 years ago that started what we call the decade of downtown. We've put a stop to that. We've made sure that if there are public dollars that are being leveraged to create development, that it's creating development that people can actually afford to live in. And so that's one of the tweaks that we've done over the last several years since I became mayor. I'm very proud of it because that's driving towards a vision where we can all enjoy this community together, especially when we're all investing in it.
So as the decade of downtown, what do you want this decade to be?
I want this to start the era of mobility, and that means we are finally creating a modern transportation system in San Antonio that will stand the test of time, that will keep us moving and getting out of congestion. But it also means by virtue of building physical mobility, we're also enhancing socioeconomic mobility. We have to fight poverty in the city. We have tremendous numbers of our population that have languished in poverty for generations. And so we need to make sure that we invest in creating opportunity. And that means education. It means opportunities to access workforce skill development. It means opportunities to get post-secondary education and things like the Alamo Promise program, which will now ensure that every Bexar County high school graduate has the opportunity to get a degree regardless of the circumstances from which they came. So this will be the era of mobility, both physical and socioeconomic in San Antonio.
A big part of bringing these transportation plans here to San Antonio is you and having your voice heard. Another big priority for the mayor is the census coming up in 2020. And I asked him, why should we care about the census and what part of the census makes sure that the development happens here in the city of San Antonio and our surrounding areas? 2020 is a huge year, but a big year for the census. Why should people care? Obviously, everyone's getting it in the mail, but I think for the everyday man and woman, hardworking, 9 to 5, they see this piece of paper, let's fill it out. Why is it so important?
Your voice in government in the federal level, your voice in Congress, the ability for us to pay for that roadway project that may or may not be in front of your house, the ability to deliver essential services is always a partnership between the federal level and the local level. And so in order for us to get our fair share of resources from all these different levels of government, it requires us to be counted. They compare the population sizes to determine how much of the resources go to different places. They look at the population number to see how many representatives a state or a local district has. All that depends on us getting an accurate and complete count in San Antonio and every other city in the country. And the reason why it's so critically important in San Antonio is that we have so many pockets of the population that are at risk for undercount based on the demographer's research. So we have to work literally door to door to make sure that we encourage our neighbors to fill out the census. We also have to break some of the myths that are out there. This is not, this is not a registration. This is not, gathering private information. This is simply making sure that we count the number of people that are in our community to make sure that we have the ability to serve that many people.
You're making sure that you have the count so that you can go ahead with your plans.
That's right. Well, not just our plans, but all the plans that we share as a community, all of our ability to be counted and represented in the federal level. So everything that we do from a public standpoint, you and me, riding on our streets or going to our schools, depends on making sure that relative to the other cities around the country, we know how many people are in San Antonio.
We asked you via our social media and through some of our newscasts to submit your questions for the mayor, and a popular trend was crime. Back in 2018, San Antonio was listed as one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. Also a top priority for some of our viewers, gang violence. So when we sat down with the mayor, we asked your questions. Crime has been an issue. A lot of people that reached out to us said that there's been a lot of high-profile crimes and gang-related crimes. How do you address these allegations of increased crime, and what do you plan to do about it?
Yeah, so since I became mayor in 2017, we prior to had seen a spike in violent crime that had gone up to a 30-year high. Over the last 2 years, we've really been working with our police department and with the community in general, making the right kinds of moves that we have actually dropped our violent crime rate to near 30-year lows. That trend is continuing. but we also have to make sure that we're continuing to work to ensure resources are there. So in the last city budget, the City Council prioritized new uniformed police officers. We also have been working with our police department and the community to establish different crime control districts. And then we have task forces that focus on specific criminal activity, whether it's drug proliferation or it's gang activity, particularly with gang activity. We've been working in partnership with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, with the state of Texas DPS, and other entities, including intelligence agencies, to share information and to ensure that we're getting a grip on gang activity. It's called the Texas Anti-Gangs Initiative. We were very fortunate to be part of that through the state of Texas, and that continues to this very day. But it will mean that we have to stay vigilant. You know, this city, again, is the fastest growing city in the country. We stand at the crossroads of two major interstates. We are a gateway to, the rest of the Americas. And so, the work that we've done together as a community is dependent on collaboration, and it also means that we have to stay ever vigilant.
Okay. Now, one viewer actually asked us, BCSO, they've had some issues in regards to some of their sheriff's deputies and also the jail. How do you respond when you see stuff like this?
Yeah, so, I can't speak for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, but I can tell you that it's a strong collaboration between SAPD and Bexar County at all times. It's required. We share a lot of the same service territory. We make sure that when we have corresponding operations that we're working together collaboratively, and we stand ready to help in any way to assist.
Well, back in 2010, a nonprofit campaign was born, SA 2020, but that year is here. We are in 2020. So I asked the mayor, what did the last decade look like? What were those goals? Did we reach them? And what's next? We're in 2020.
We are in 2020. And I'm very excited because I think we can look back on the previous decade about the big visions that we had as a community in terms of environmental sustainability, in terms of transportation, education, all these things. We've made a number of significant measures of progress. We've got a lot of work to do. In a few weeks, we're going to be getting an update from SA 2020, the nonprofit organization, to tell us how 2019 looks and how our 9 years of progress shapes up. And then we embark on a year-long activity where we are going to be working with the community. Once again, SA 2020 will be working to get input, feedback, collaboration with the community to really update what our vision is for the future. It's going to be an opportunity for us once again to do the thing that I think SA 2020 was so incredibly important for, and that is to bring people from all over this community, every corner, every district, and to really build on the vision of San Antonio being one of the greatest cities in America. And I think we are in a strong position, certainly a much better position than 10 years ago as we continue to see our city grow and prosper.
A food desert is when a community does not have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't have a conventional grocery store within 2 miles. So as we continue to develop in and around San Antonio, how are we making sure that these communities are not left behind? One district that's I'm very passionate about, Southside ISD. Yeah. And they are seeing huge growth. Yeah. They're seeing a lot of corporations come in, expansion of the TJ Maxx distribution center. Yeah. One problem that they're seeing though is there's still a food desert.
Yeah.
So how do you guys plan to address that?
Yeah, great question. And we are seeing great economic development happening in South San Antonio, South Side. A lot of that has to do with the supplier network of Toyota and also the activity at Brooks and Port San Antonio. A lot of major employers have been opening up there. Lots of job creation. One element that has really driven growth in the south side of San Antonio is that we finally built that sewer connection. Major sewer infrastructure that we also know helps relieve pressure from growth where it is a little bit more difficult to manage. So a lot of great stuff happening in South San Antonio, but you're right, there is a food desert that persists. We're starting to see grocery development there. But one thing the city of San Antonio has done is create a healthy corner stores initiative where we work with corner stores in the area, particularly in District 3, the southeast side, to establish cold storage so that they can have more fruits and vegetables and healthy foods available for people. And what we've seen in the process of doing that is a huge increase in the amount of fruits and vegetables and healthy foods that are being purchased and being ultimately consumed by the families in that area. That's one specific way we can work on food deserts. A lot of it has to do with where we steer development, and I see that work is happening and bearing fruit already.
Building a thriving city stems from a thriving economy. A stable economy comes from stable jobs. The mayor tells us this all comes from education, a new focus on K through 12, and of course, the Alamo Promise. What about education? I mean, we kind of talked about expansion of education. We've done several stories on STEM programs at almost every high school at this point. What about the Alamo colleges? What about UTSA, Texas A&M San Antonio? What do you think the vision of the future of education looks like here in San Antonio with so many jobs coming?
Well, it's really about creating opportunity. And we have record low unemployment. We've been sub 3% for many, many months. And so the question remains, why are we persisting in poverty and low wages? And that's because there is a gap in the skills that employers that are coming are requiring and the jobs that we want to create that we know lift all boats. So what we have to do is invest as a community in education, and that was one of the aspects of the SA 2020 vision. One thing that we've done is we've authorized, and we have seen the great success over the last 7 years of pre-K for SA, which provides early childhood education for thousands of our young people across town. So we will be asking voters to reauthorize that initiative in 2020. The second thing that we've done is really focused in on workforce development, reskilling employees who want to get back into the workforce with new skills for new opportunities that are being created. We've also been working towards better connections with our K through 12 system, and we're seeing a lot of innovation and collaboration happening. Texas A&M University here in San Antonio just announced a major collaboration with several of the South and West Side school districts. And then finally, I would say that we also know that 65 to 70% of the jobs that are being created in our community require a post-secondary education, meaning a technical certification or a college degree. We have, believe it or not, here in San Antonio, the very best community college district in the entire country. They won the Baldrige Award last year, a national recognition, the only community college district to do that. So what we've been doing over the last couple of years, and we finally launched, is a collaboration with the college district, with Bexar County, and with the city of San Antonio called Alamo Promise, which will make sure that every single Bexar County high school student is able to go and get an associate's level degree at the Alamo Community College District without regard to their circumstances from which they came, without regard to tuition. That program launched this year. We're already seeing thousands of students enroll in it, and this is really our opportunity to finally get our goals for job creation and ending poverty and lifting wages in the city aligned with the workforce pipeline that we have here in town. And it's extraordinary. I think it's one of the most transformative things that will happen in the city. And that's also not to mention the great trajectory of our other colleges and universities that are happening. We know the downtown UTSA development, which is really going to ultimately end with UTSA becoming a Tier 1 research institution, and all the great stuff that's happening with our 30 plus accredited colleges and universities.
So a lot of people, a lot of high school kids who end up going to college, a lot of them, their goal is to go to places like Austin or to Houston. If you could talk to them, why would they stay here? What is your conversation with them to stay in San Antonio?
A funny thing happened over the winter break is that I've been having a lot of conversations with people about their kids coming back for vacation or winter break or something. And I kid you not, nearly every single conversation I had was a surprised comment that said, for the first time ever, I've heard my child say that, you know what, I think I'm going to move back to San Antonio. I'm going to come back home. We're finally ending the brain drain in San Antonio, which was that exporting of all the students that once they graduate, they leave San Antonio. We have to do that. We have to continue to invest in our education. We have to invest in building a city that's quality, that people like to live in. The quality of life is so important, and we're starting to see that bubble up, and downtown is a great example of that. we have to make sure that we invest in places or in things that can move us around, efficient transportation system. But ultimately, it means that we also have to create opportunities here. Young people will go where they want to live and also where they can get a job that they have trained in or been educated in.
A noticeable building here in San Antonio and a key part of the San Antonio skyline, the Tower of America, standing a whopping 750 feet tall. There is a rumor out there that no building can be built taller than the Tower of America. So we wanted to find out. We asked the mayor, is this true?
There are a lot of codes and deed restrictions and things that control the height of various buildings, but there is not an ordinance that says every building has to be lower than the Tower of the Americas. I'd love to see one try to get higher than that, but there's not an ordinance.
Branching off of that, we just saw the new Frost Tower come up.
Yeah.
What do you see the skyline of San Antonio looking like by the time we have another 1 million people?
Yeah, it's going to be changed. I think San Antonio is going to continue to grow up and not out, meaning that its urban core is going to see new buildings reach on the horizon. You can already see what's going to happen by some of the buildings that are cropping up and the cranes that are there. San Antonio is is no longer a best kept secret, and people are investing their time, their talent, their energy, and their money and resources into San Antonio to create a better situation for all of us. And that's really our charge. That's my charge as mayor, is to make sure that as we grow and as our prosperity increases, that is an opportunity for us to all benefit from that growth, that we can all enjoy the San Antonio of the future, whether you're here already or whether you're going to be born here or are moving here.
How does San Antonio plan on handling growth and development while also maintaining its natural look outside of the main loops?
I think some of that's naturally occurring. As I mentioned, we have done a prolific job in creating conservation easements and really protecting green space. A lot of that now is far away from the city center, so a lot of that area that's been protected has already been protected. We also have very strong ordinances where they're not preempted by the state in terms of tree canopy and preservation of green space and non-impervious cover or impervious cover. So, but really what we're focusing on is making sure that we're not seeing sprawl continue to go outward, that we have a sensible, coordinated way of developing when we have some control over that, and that's what we're working every day to do in accordance with the city's vision.
That ideology of up, not out.
That's right.
Will the tech spillover coming? Can we compete with Austin in the future, with tech giants?
We're getting there. Austin, believe it or not, we have more college students than Austin does here in San Antonio. The question is, where will they be after they graduate? And so we're starting to see a lot of growth within our young tech community and the tech jobs that are available. That's going to really come into fore with the developments that are happening down at Port San Antonio, which has become a cybersecurity capital of the world. We're also looking forward to the School of Data Science and the National Security Collaboration Center that's being developed downtown by UTSA. We're seeing all of the cybersecurity accredited department educational programs that are cropped up all around the city. And then, of course, just the nature of industry, which is focusing and shifting more to technology, artificial intelligence, things like that are requiring skilled workforce. All of those factors are aligning. We are now creating those jobs. You're going to see that accelerate through the next decade.
There are more than 2,800 homeless people here in San Antonio. It's a problem that we addressed extensively in our special, In the Shadow. We spoke to the mayor then, but now with the population expected to rise by more than 1 million people, there's a fear that the homeless population can rise with it.
We have a focus on homelessness, and we have ever since Haven for Hope was built, and that has helped to reduce our downtown homeless population by almost 80%. What's happened over the last 5, 6, 7 years is that we've seen the homeless population stagnate. It's not going up. Our population is going up, but the homeless population is not going up. What's happening is some of it's spreading. And so what we're doing is we're working to find where the homeless encampments are taking place and really help to get those folks into a continuum of services and understanding that homelessness is a symptom, not a cause, often associated with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, domestic violence issues. And now an area that we're seeing more of is people who have lost their homes. So we're working on all of these issues in a very acute manner, focused to ensure that people are getting into the services that they need to ultimately get them back on their feet.
I think one of the biggest fears is because people are saying San Antonio is going to be the next Austin. A lot of the people that say that are also saying that Austin has a big homeless population, and that's what they're scared of. When you hear that from people, what do you say to them?
Well, first of all, San Antonio is not the next Austin. San Antonio is the next San Antonio. We are growing in a unique way, and we're protecting our culture and our heritage, and we are a unique city into the world, and we will maintain that. That's a focus of ours. But Austin has dealt with its homelessness issues in much different ways, and we have the benefit of having an extraordinary community of services and organizations that are contributing to that effort, from our faith-based organizations which have reaffirmed their commitment to helping us in this area, to Haven for Hope, to all of the different homeless advocacy services that are out there, coordinated through a group called SARA, San Antonio Regional Alliance for Homelessness. We're all coordinated, and we're actually now working with the housing ecosystem to ensure that we're getting a grip on this issue comprehensively.
What is the future of transportation between San Antonio and Austin, and San Antonio and other major cities? What does that direct line look like in the future?
Yeah, so a couple things. Between San Antonio and Austin, we know civic leaders have come and gone over the last 30 years trying to get rail between Austin and San Antonio. I'm happy to tell you there's going to be a focused push to leverage the existing passenger rail that is between Austin and San Antonio that Amtrak currently operates, and see if we can make that service more efficient. You're going to see us work on that over the next year to really improve service between Austin and San Antonio. In addition to that, when I was on the Metropolitan Planning Organization shortly before I became mayor, we worked with the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, both of which focused regionally on transportation issues, to create a connection, to really end the old debates and really focus on something that's feasible. And so those conversations are happening right now. They're working on environmental and also alternative routes, and you're going to start to see and hear more about that through the MPOs shortly.
Okay. You just came off of a dogfight mayoral race. It was close.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, do you think that you have the confidence and the backing of the city and the city council? You have a lot of plans in the future. Do you think you have everyone standing behind you?
So when I look at our city and I think about the vision that we articulated as a community through SA 2020, and then I look at the work that we're doing, I'm absolutely confident we're making progress on that, on those goals, and we're doing so in a very concerted effort. And so I feel good about where we are today as a city of San Antonio, and ultimately that's what the test will be, is to ensure that our city continues to move on the right track, that we're continuing to be a place where that people can find their career, that they can feel safe, that they have an enjoyable experience, and they're able to raise a family in. And so I'm excited. This past election was a grueling one, but I don't expect anything ever to be different. We live in a turbulent political environment from here to Washington, D.C., but our focus needs to be on building our community and working together as a community, and ensuring that we're doing the work that our constituents send us there to do. And I'm very happy and excited and confident that we're doing that.
Okay, last question, sports related.
Sure.
The idea of a AAA baseball team here in San Antonio.
So we have one, the San Antonio Missions. I'm a huge fan. Wish them, continued success. We know that the debate has been about, the next stadium, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what their plans are. Remain open to, look at the merits of any proposal that comes forward. And so we'll see where that conversation goes. But San Antonio has a history of very proud and loyal fan base, hence all of our existing success with the Spurs, and then of course the San Antonio Missions, and even our San Antonio Football Club now. So look forward to hearing more about that soon.
But no concrete plans for a stadium downtown?
No, again, I have said from the very beginning, I don't think we should be spending public dollars on a downtown minor league stadium. But I will look at the merits of any proposal, and so we absolutely want to make sure that the San Antonio Missions have a bright and long future in San Antonio, and we look forward to seeing a proposal from them.
Well, there you have it. Mayor Ron Nirenberg has some lofty goals for 2020 and the years to come here in San Antonio. Again, calling it the era of mobility here, not only transportation-wise, but also socioeconomically. Now, we are far from done here on Leading SA. We are going to hear from many more leaders here in the Alamo City.